everyone. Thank you for the introductions, Ali. Hope you're well. I see that Alia and Umar has already joined us as well. How are you
Hi
doing?
everyone. Hi everyone. Hi Anjali.
So, I think there's a lot of discussion happening about change across the world. We have listened to different previous panels as well, and some really interesting thoughts came forward. Now that we are working towards the next session, this is going to basically be about the workforce readiness, and I think the world has kept on changing, along the years, swiftly or gradually. But the way that the pandemic has actually, changed the businesses as we know it, it's been exponential. Digitalization has skyrocketed across industry, and hybrid work arrangements have become a necessity of, today. So, is it here to stay? Is it going? Are we going to return back to business as usual? This is what we are going to be discussing in this session today. So, Rizwan, I'd like to ask you the first question. Productivity increased multifold with the hybrid workforce, but so did the exhaustion. I mean, a lot of people complain that they're not finding enough time and they're doing a lot of work. Uh, they're doing twice as much as work that they were doing previously. Do you think that this kind of hybrid work environment is sustainable for the future?
So Andaleep, Rizwan is joining in a moment. So meanwhile, you can actually start the conversation with Alia and Umar. I think he just joined, so maybe you can start with the other people.
Yeah, Alia, if Anjali, if you don't mind, I can respond to that.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I think when we talk about new ways of working, obviously it requires a lot of things to be revamped, right? So we need to define productivity also, right?
Mm-hmm.
So productivity, how would you measure that? Productivity is not the number of hours that you spend in the on workplace, right? Or uh, remotely, right? That is something that we need to be very clear. So the productivity parameters will be changed, and it depends on organization to organization how they actually revamp it. On the other side, I think what is important for leadership to understand that how this hybrid work is impacting the lives of employees. Okay, so they cannot work as they used to work on a physical place, right? Probably leadership need to trust more and empower their people, because otherwise the stress that you're talking about of working late hours is because of lack of trust of leadership on their people when they are working remotely, right? So the only way to judge their productivity in their thinking is that if they are online or not,
Mm.
right? So people, and also we need to adjust our life. So work has to be done for the specific number of hours.
Right.
You cannot have, because you are sitting at home, that does not mean that you are working 24 hours. And that is the biggest challenge that we faced when this COVID actually pushed us to work remotely. And the biggest complaint that we were getting from employees that there is no sign off time for them. They sign on at 9 o'clock, but there is no sign off. And that is obviously creating a lot of stress. But people adjust accordingly. So I give you my example. When I was working remote, when we started in the lockdown, what I used to do, I put my phone down at 5:30, leave it at home, and go for my walk. After 3 days or 4 days, people will realize that Umar will not attend any meeting after 5:30 or will not pick up his call between 5:30 to 7.
Mm.
Right? So you need to set expectations, but obviously it should come from top. So I was, because leading the function, the way I was behaving, people got that comfort also.
Mm.
So this is how you can actually create a culture of hybrid working in a manner which will not be stressful for employees.
Sure. Absolutely right. I think leadership has a really important role to play in this particular case. But there was another concern that was being raised, and this came from the survey that we did as well, that the leadership has to go an extra mile to make this comfort level available or to basically connect with the teams. It is very difficult for a leader to be sitting in a different location and the team to be sitting in a different location. And then, creating that comfort zone or creating that trust between the employees and the leadership. So what do you think lacked there, apart from productivity or the timelines? What do you think the leadership could
It's the
enhance?
mindset. It's the mindset. It's the mindset, right? If I trust my people, and if I empower my people, and if I know they are capable and dedicated people, right? And if even if they are not physically present or sitting in front of me in the office, they will take the responsibility and deliver on that. Then obviously everything will be changed. So the leadership has to make that mindset shift, where they have to start trusting their people and empowering them.
Sure. So Alia, what do you think about the Gen Z now that we within these COVID time period we have graduates coming out and passing out, and now they'll be looking for jobs. And unlike people like us who have been to the conventional ways of working, they haven't. So what if a Gen Z person or somebody who's graduating right now comes and gets a job and works from home? Do you think there's going to be a disconnect between the generations? Do you think there's going to be a gap, and what are their prospects going forward?
Thank you. I think from this generation's perspective, it can be a bit of a blessing because they are pretty much used to a fluid, I would say, not just space that they engage in, but the space in which they are productive as well. So for them, uh, being 9 to 5 would have been more of a challenge. So I would think the biggest challenge that they would face would be having no flexi hours, for example, not just working from home, but not having flexi hours may be more of a challenge rather than anything else. In terms of innovation, they can probably work better a lot of times while they are sitting at home, and they can innovate better. Um, their engagement mostly is online. So for them, this is a more comfortable way of interacting with their colleagues as well. So in that particular space, actually, they are more comfortable, and they also have a better grip on it than the previous generations, of course. So from that perspective, also, it's a good thing for them. The only challenge I see is their sort of non-flexibility in most cases in terms of very rigid work schedules, for example. And that's where their challenge lies. But that challenge is beyond the COVID, and it's beyond what we are looking at right now. It's really about how they actually interact with their own workspaces. And for that, organizations do need to rethink how and where we can deploy them so that they can be much more effective. Probably flatter structures also. They're not really used to having a lot of layers on top of them telling them what to do. So much more agile, and yet much more rigid in that getting into that structured, layered hierarchy may not be for them. And that's why you see a trend, a lot of them going into entrepreneurship. Not really a lot of them are seeking actively jobs if you look at the percentages. So that also gives you a clear indication that they don't want a lot of bosses on their head. They're just not used to that kind of working. So from that perspective, you need to have a different work environment also. So all components, because we have 5 generations working together, so it becomes a bit of a challenge. And on top of that, of course, we have COVID and the whole world going in a different dimension as well.
Absolutely. I think there's a question in the comment section, and I am going to shoot this out because it is quite relevant. We're talking about how Gen Z would adjust to the work environments, and then we have to also factor in that there are different kinds of people. There are working mothers, there are mothers who have children under the age of 6 or 5, and then we have people who are, the male people who are unmarried and young and free to do whatever they want to do in their, time. So how do you think that leaders can create that kind of differentiation? How should be these roles differentiated? Because it's difficult for a mother to manage the online schools of their young children. They have to give attention to them as well. So how do you think leaders should think about managing this situation?
I think some of the things some of the industry leaders in this have done. I've done it in one of the organizations, at least. We are looking at it again here as well, where I'm working right now at BOP. The thing is, for females especially, COVID has really been one of the most challenging, and it's much more challenging for females, and I'll tell you why. One of the reasons is that a lot of them have children, young children, staying at home, which essentially meant that they may have to leave their jobs instead of their partners leaving the job. So their jobs go first because they need to prioritize the family and the children who have been at home for the last year and a half. So somebody has to do the schooling responsibility, somebody has to take that responsibility, which essentially means that organizations need to be much more empathetic, specifically to these first underrepresented groups, and then groups which are also more at a disadvantage. So once you look at that, you need to change the type of contracts that you offer, something which is legally possible. So you can have short-term contracts, you can have a 50% work contract. So you need to look at the contract types that you offer to various categories, the way they need their work to be structured so that they can remain productive, remain part of the workforce, and yet also support their families at this particular time, because this is what the transition is all about. For younger employees who are just entering the field, there are two aspects to it. Of course, they require their freedom, and the freedom essentially means that you need to have a work-life balance, and that balance needs to be defined. Where lies the balance for that particular segment? You need to have flexi work arrangements, and yet at some point in time, you also need some kind of capacity development in a particular direction, because the organizations also do require employees to be productive in a particular sphere of time at times. So it's more of a, I think, dialogue between the two, which needs to take place so that an adjustment is created. Also, when you think of younger employees or older employees, one major factor which has, I think, become extremely highlighted now is employee wellness. Because at the end of the day, if all organizations had focused earlier, which they hadn't, but now they are. So if we focus more on employee wellness programs and really focusing on it, it means essentially giving space to different sets of employees in different ways, so that they actually get a psychological comfort, not just the money that they require to be in that job. And that psychological comfort is extremely important now, considering that we are all under this huge stress for the last nearly 2 years now. And there is a lot of insecurity relating to the future. So there is a burden and a psychological stress all of us are carrying with us to our organizations. And for that reason, organizations really I have seen it in my organization. I have seen how the industries are trying to move towards that, but they really need to be much more empathetic, and they really need to focus and focus and focus on employee wellness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, since we are talking about diversification, Rizwan, I would like you to shed some light on the cultural differences. There have been quite a few, dialogues where people are saying that COVID has actually created more jobs. The reason that we are becoming hybrid and this disruption that is happening, it is actually creating more jobs, geographically, sparse jobs, and then there are ethnically diverse, ek jagah pe dene, ek jagah pe rate kind of jobs. So while we are handling different kinds of age groups and different gender roles, etc., how do you think this would impact the hybrid work situation?
I think this will stay, right? So first thing is we need to accept that this will stay and it'll evolve and it'll go in this same direction, right? So it will not go back to what we were doing a couple of years back, right? So the future, the way I think things would have happened 3, 4 years from today has happened, right? So we need to adapt. So that's the first thing. I think we all understand this, and this is not going away soon, right? So it'll take some more time. So what we need to do is we need to adjust, right? So your question on has this environment or this change created more jobs? In some areas, yes, right? So I'm not sure the net impact is a growth in the overall jobs, but in certain areas, yes, definitely, right? Now you will see more gig workers, you will see more people who would like to operate on their own time, right? And there is acceptability from the organization side as well, right? So they are ready to employ those people in the organizations as well, right? So where uh, probably it was not a norm 2, 3, 4 years back where you outsource part of your work, right? So now this is acceptable by the people and the teams as well, right? So I think this hybrid model, these gigs and remote working flexibility, that will stay in the in future. And I think we look at different research, so about 60 to 70% people prefer working remotely now. There are about 20 to 30% people who want to work hybrid, and about very few people would like to go back to the offices. But when I said 60 to 70%, so there's a part where people want to go back to work, but not regularly on their own choice, right? So I think that flexibility and choice becomes important for people now once this pandemic has happened.
But how do you cope with the challenges of innovation? For example, previously people would meet in a social setting, they would sit together, they would collaborate. And a lot of companies have this in their values to be collaborative, to be customer obsessed, and to socially be intertwined with each other in a way that you can actually work towards complex goals or complex problems. But now that people are sitting in different homes, and this is one of the issues that came in from the survey as well, that the number of meetings, yeah, the way that we used to talk to each other, just giving a call or just going up to somebody and talking to them, is now changed. It is happening now over Zoom. So there is a lot of cultural and social impact to it as well. Do you think this is going to somehow give a setback to the innovation of companies, or do you think that this is going to become challenging to complex problem solving situations?
See, in the leap, you know what will happen, right? So workplace, work, and workforce, all three will change, right? So work can happen anywhere. So for work, you might not have to go to your workplace now because it's acceptable for all of us, right? So work could be remote, you could be anywhere to work, right? So the office space probably will not be for work in future. So what happens? Why the office space will be? Office space will be for collaboration, for culture, learning of culture, for innovation. So the office spaces will also be redesigned in future, right? So a lot of companies who are going on these remote working, giving autonomy to people, they are coming with all these ecosystems as well, right? Technology will evolve as well. So there'll be the way we are interacting today, it was not available 2 years back, right? So these things have evolved, right? So the whole ecosystem will evolve. So I don't think so innovation will stop. It'll carry on, and I think it'll be more than what we see today. There'll be exponential, I think, change the way things we have seen in the last 2, 3 years. So a lot more technology, a lot more, I think, advancement will happen in the ecosystems and digitization for us. So this I think the influx of change will not slow down. It'll further escalate. And the workplace will be for innovation. People will come collaborate on their own. Flexibility probably will become most essential for people and the companies, that how they facilitate their people on that. Of course, as Umar was saying, you need to have an infrastructure, you need to have systems, you need to have tracking, you need to have different tools available, right? So innovation probably will go in these areas. So I think in last 2 years, I have seen tons of research coming on these areas, right? So how you engage your people digitally, how you create a framework, right? How you, from an input system to output system, how you measure output for people, right? So how you become smarter, looking at people's objective differently, right? So a lot more focus will go on those areas, right? So because see, smart machines will be there. People need to learn to work around smart machines. Digitization and that ecosystem will be there. People need to stay that understand that how they will operate in that environment. And the next thing is ways of working will keep on changing. So how we change will become important for us, right?
Absolutely. So Umar,
Yeah, just I want to add one thing what Rizwan said. I think very pertinent points. Jobs are changing. That is not because of the hybrid only. It's because of how we are changing our ways of working, right? So digitization is there, but one thing which is changing with this hybrid situation or because of this COVID is that now many jobs are location agnostic.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're working from home, then you don't have to be at a certain in a certain geography. So what it is doing? It is creating an opportunity for low cost markets like Pakistan. So where if same job can be done from Pakistan remotely, why would somebody place that individual in Singapore or in UAE? Right. So that is the opportunity that is created for people like us in Pakistan, because we are low cost country, and if job can be done from anywhere. So this is how more opportunities have been created.
Absolutely.
But I'm thinking on the reverse as well, right? If a skill set is not available in Pakistan today, I think we can source that skill from outside, right? So
yeah, Rizwan, that is absolutely right. Now what you have to work on developing that skill set. No? So if we know the opportunities are there and we need to upskill or reskill our people, right? So this is where we are focusing now. The opportunity is lying there. We just have to upskill or reskill our people.
Yeah. So Umar, while we are on the subject, I think there is a cost associated to becoming hybrid. I mean, obviously, because there are a lot of industries in Pakistan, as Rizwan already mentioned, that we need to do a lot of skill development, and we need to make sure while we are seeking, jobs outside of Pakistan, global jobs as well, there is a lot of skill development that can be done over here in Pakistan as well. But there is a cost associated to it, and a lot of people, a lot of leaderships in Pakistan are old school. And they are still the challenges that we have seen in the survey as well, they're still used to of the olden ways. So how do you think, how much do you think is the cost of becoming hybrid, or staying hybrid in those kind of setups?
Yeah, in the beginning, obviously, what companies are doing, they are running two separate setups. Right? One is the brick and mortar, which they are not abolishing at this point in time. And the other one is setting up infrastructure for people to work remotely. Okay, so there is an additional cost attached to it. But in the medium to long term, you will see that the cost of doing business will come down. Because the way, for example, now we are, what we have at a workplace is 70% capacity. Not 100%, because we know that any point in time, 30%, at least 30 to 40% would work remotely. So the brick and mortar cost will come down. The reason why we are feeling the pain at this point in time, because we are running two different setups. So we have to cut down on the brick and mortar if we really want to switch from brick and mortar to hybrid. What I believe is that if you want people to adopt something, take away the other options. For example, we have been trying to be flexible and asking people to work from home, but nobody was adopting it. But when COVID forced us, we started adopting. So organization need to take a decision. Yes, initially the cost is high, but I can tell you, infrastructure technology cost in the beginning is high, but in the medium to long term, it is less expensive than the brick and mortar. And what we have seen in case of technology, that technology is something which is getting cheaper and cheaper every day as we develop, right? Whereas brick and mortar cost increases with inflation every year. So this is the call that people need to, organization and leaders need to take at this point in time. Unless they look at it as a good to have situation, that yes, we have this opportunity for people to work remotely or flexibly, but we still have brick and mortar, then obviously your cost will be much more than that. So that's the decision that you need to take. And big organization like Rizwan said, they have already taken that decision. That they in our organization, you won't believe, even at the MT level, group CEO, they don't have any office. They have converted all the office spaces either into conference rooms or in a free spacing area. Right. So this is how they are saving cost and obviously investing it in the technology.
Absolutely.
Can I say something on this?
Sure.
I think Umar was spot on explaining this, right? But I think one thing, the mindset shift, it's not a cost, it's an investment for future. So I think if that shift happens in the management teams, things will change for them, right? So the lens you see is very important. So you're investing for future. So initially it'll go up, but in the longer run, that's the way to move, right? So, and eventually your productivity, all these things will be a lot higher than what we have today.
Absolutely. So while we've spoken about a lot of pros, what we are going towards, if we are ready or not to face the future, if we are ready or not to adopt hybrid working arrangements, across the board or not, there are obviously, for everything there are cons as well. So it's an open question to all three of you. What do you think will go wrong with this? Because I have a feeling that a lot of people will start adopting to this without making a lot of changes into their processes and their, policies. So what do you think? What are the 3-4 things that you guys think are going to go wrong initially when this is going to be implemented for good?
Yeah, and this Deep, is the one thing that people need to understand. They cannot implement this hybrid in bits and pieces. New ways of working requires complete revamp of how we work, starting from recruitment to talent management and training, right? And how you develop people. Unless you don't bring about change in everything, because remote working requires different skills in people, and obviously with the digitization and new ways of working, you have to change everything. You need people with right behaviors, which you can only identify at that time of hiring. You develop people based on the skills that you require in future, and you have to democratize learning. You cannot, now, you cannot just keep learning or development for your top talent. You have to revamp it. It has to be provided to everybody in the organization. And that is not possible unless you have digital learning available. So the problem would only arise if you pick up one thing which is easy to implement and then expect the desired results. So you can't just have one flexibility given to people without equipping them with the right skills, without providing them the right infrastructure. You would not see the results. You will see productivity going down. You will see people well-being going down. You will see frustrated people and everything that you can talk about as cons.
Sure.
So may I add something here?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. I think there are a few very clear cons, and I think these have been sort of researched as well. I was working on a hybrid model before COVID as well, while I was in Rome, in WFP. The challenges with working from home and working from various different locations over a period of time are a lot of them actually relate to mental health issues.
Mm.
They relate to a feeling of isolation, a feeling of not really being part of a team. So inclusion is something which really gets affected. In the long term, your connectivity with your teams within the organization and innovation both are affected, and in a negative way. Even if you are able to manage it in the best possible way. And the reason is very simple. Human beings are social creatures by nature. So while we sit in front of computers and we are interacting, there comes a time when a fatigue sets in because human touch is important. Meeting people is extremely important for your mental health. So when you take that component away completely, in hybrid models, you may have a bit of it, and even when you have a bit of it, what happens is a number of personalities, and you know there are different types of people working in every organization, tend to withdraw. And they withdraw from talking about it as well. So what happens eventually is a loss of productivity as well. So it's a very challenging area to get into as well. It might seem very easy to get into, to have all the right types of equipments and all the right type of upskilling and all the right type of e-learnings, but it's just not enough because human interaction cannot really be taken out completely, or even for 80% of your time, because when we do that, there are real mental health challenges which organizations then have to face. And that means you really need to invest a lot more on wellness programs, again, which I was talking about earlier. And you need to really focus a lot more on stress counselors being part of your teams as permanent, essentially, employees as well. So it's one of the components. There are technological components also, but I think this for me becomes from a people's perspective. And while we are leading teams of people and we are trying to make environments and people happy wherever we are, I think this really is something that we need to focus on as leaders within our workspaces. Thank you.
Absolutely, Alia, that's absolutely right. Any closing remarks from you, Rizwan, on this?
I think both have summed it up very well, but I'll add one part, right? So, my personal experience with my organization. So, last year we were reacting to this, right? So, what Alia was mentioning, that mental health issues, right? So, more counselors bringing help for people, right? So, now we're in a different phase now, reaction to resilience, right? So, how we are becoming resilient in this to operate remotely. So we started creating opportunities for people to meet, to interact, so now I think it's a different phase for the organization to think, right? It's not to react to the situation because that has become normal now. So what sort of opportunities we create for people to come, interact, meet, innovate, and collaborate. So I think that becomes more important. There's a lot more focus today on those things.
Absolutely. I think we are running short on time, so I'll just move towards the closing remarks. I think it's a very fruitful discussion, and from whatever we have heard today, it's evident that we are ready to some extent to make these changes and to go to this kind of work culture and work environment. Um, Rizwan, what do you think are the three basic ingredients? We've discussed a lot of things over here, but what are the, maybe two or three basic ingredients that would make this entire work hybrid situation sustainable in Pakistan, where there are different kinds of people speaking different languages, coming from different ethnic backgrounds, etc., etc. Do you think that this is going to stay here if these two, three things are followed by every organization?
See, as I said, it'll stay. So it's not going away, right? So that's the first, accepting the fact, right, is very important. So, so I think that's where it starts, right? So that's where the behavior will start changing, right? So it'll start from you, right? It starts from me, right? If I don't react, if I don't act in the similar manner, how the rest of the organization will do. So every individual needs to reflect and see, right? So this is the new ways of working, how we adapt to it, right? So adaptability, change, thinking differently now is very important, right? So for every organization, as I think we kept saying, build the infrastructure. Don't shy away, because this is not going away. Change the mindset at the leadership level. Invest at the right place, right? And keep thinking, because see, the other important thing which I think as HR professionals we need to do in the organization is really see how roles are decomposing. So what skills will be required for our people tomorrow, right? So do it for our people, right? So decompose, recompose, tell them that what they need for tomorrow, right? So what sort of skills will be required? So they self-learning, self-management, cognitive abilities, all these will become important, right? So staying in that ecosystem will become important for people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alia, Rizwan, and Omar, for being a part of this talk and sharing your valuable knowledge with us from your organizations. Over to Ali.
All right. Thank you so much, Andaleep, and the rest of the panelists, Umar, Rizwan, and Alia, for a wonderful conversation. And I'm